A towering monk is sprinting down a rugged mountain path, urgently pursued by a mob of angry villagers. Moments earlier, at the village well, he grabbed and kissed a woman before the entire community. His young disciple, Mubigong, eventually catches him in the forest, gasping for air. While the disciple is still trembling from the threat of the beating, the master looks at him and asks, "When running for your life, did the heavy bag of grain on your back still feel heavy?" This was Gyeongheo. He openly drank alcohol, demanded meat, and spent his life shattering the expectations of his peers. But this disruptive behavior wasn't just a personal rebellion. It was a calculated shock to a religious system that had become a relic of the past. In the late 19th century Joseon Dynasty, Buddhism had been relegated to the shadows. Monks were legally classified as social outcasts, and the religion retreated into the mountains, surviving only through the repetitive performance of hollow rituals. By violating the basic rules of monkhood, Gyeongheo was forcing the few remaining practitioners to decide if their religion lived in their rigid protocols or in their actual minds. Gyeongheo didn't start as an iconoclast. He was a prodigy who mastered thousands of pages of Confucian and Buddhist texts before he was a teenager. His scriptural mastery was so complete that by 23, he was appointed the head lecturer at one of the country's most prestigious monasteries. His life changed in a storm. While traveling through a village decimated by cholera, he realized that despite his decades of study, he couldn't chant his way out of the fear of death. The academic definitions and memorized sutras he had spent his life teaching offered no protection against the rot he saw in those streets. They were just conceptual maps of a place he had never actually visited. He abandoned his teaching post and locked himself in a room. For months, he sat in silence, refusing to sleep, holding a sharp knife under his chin to pierce his skin if his head dropped. He had realized that the intellectual's biggest obstacle is the belief that knowing the word for truth is the same as experiencing it. To find the source, he had to stop being a scholar entirely. In his isolation, Gyeongheo heard a monk recount a riddle about a cow with no nostrils. To lead a cow, you pull it by the ring in its nose. The nostrils are its handle, the point where it is controlled. A cow with no nostrils is a creature that cannot be led or manipulated by anything outside itself. This logic linked Gyeongheo to Huineng, an illiterate woodcutter from the 7th century, who had radically redefined Buddhist practice. Huineng countered, there is no mirror. If the mind is formless, there is nowhere for dust to land. Emptiness isn't nothingness, it's a lack of handles. Without fixed identity, it cannot be snagged by fear, reacting to any situation with perfect clarity. Gyeongheo recognized that he was like the cow with no nostrils. By removing the handles of his own ego and social status, he could no longer be led by the dogmas of his time. This realization gave Gyeongheo a foundation to challenge the stagnant state of Korean Buddhism. If the mind is already it, then the elaborate, expensive rituals of the temple were just unnecessary layers of dust. Gyeongheo called his new approach Mubigong, or unhindered action. He re-entered the world to live out this philosophy of no handles, often in ways that appeared chaotic to the religious establishment. During a memorial service for a wealthy man, he saw starving villagers watching from the gates. Gyeongheo interrupted the prayers, took the ritual offerings, and handed them to the hungry peasants. He argued that actual compassion was the only thing that could generate merit, while the ceremony itself was just theater. His drinking and eating meat were deliberate provocations. He was testing the monks around him. Were they following rules to cultivate wisdom, or were they simply attached to the identity of being pure? By making his life a series of scandals, he forced his students to stop judging his behavior and start looking at their own reactions. He stripped away the comfort of performative piety to reveal the actual work underneath. As Gyeongheo's reputation grew, he realized his own fame was becoming a new handle for his disciples. They were beginning to rely on his presence rather than their own practice. To prevent his followers from becoming attached to him, Gyeongheo did something unprecedented. He abandoned his temples, his disciples, and his name, disappearing into the mountains of the north. For his final years, he lived as an anonymous layman. He grew his hair out and lived among common laborers and shopkeepers, teaching children to read and drinking with the locals in muddy markets. He had successfully erased the Master Gyeongheo handle. When he died in 1913, his only legacy was a simple drawing of a circle, the mind moon, representing a mind that is full, bright, and completely without edges or attachments. Gyeongheo's life demonstrates that awakening is not about adding new rules or gaining a special status. It is about removing the handles of the ego until there is nothing left to lead you but the truth of the present moment. Search for nothing outside yourself. You are originally it.